quickly, let's start with Tyreek Hill. He's been a fantasy monster the past 4 years, wide receiver 7, 4, 12, and 2 in fantasy points per game. And that's all with only ranking 32nd, 18th, 30th, and 10th in targets per game. So very efficient, obviously, getting it done without being a true target hog. But then last year, there was kind of, I don't know if it was a deliberate thing or what had happened, if it was injuries, but over those final 11 weeks, Tyreek Hill averaged 10.7 targets per game. That would have been the most in the NFL last year. Had that been a full season, he had an 18, a 14, a 15 target day. He suddenly became this alpha. So I guess what I'm getting to is that something he's trending towards, or was that like out of necessity last year? Could there be a role change or an evolution to his game? What do you think with Tyreek?
Yeah, it's fascinating because I think in some ways last year it was kind of out of necessity because teams realized that it's some ways a little easier to scheme up things against Travis Kelce because he's in the middle of the field, he's going to get certain matchups, and you can lean your coverage toward him. Where with Tyreek Hill, I mean, he's one of the fastest, if not the fastest guy in the league, so it's harder to game plan for him, especially if the Chiefs' offensive line, which we all know is very new this year, if those guys stay together, it's going to be tough to keep the ball away from Tyreek Hill. Sammy Watkins had an injury last year. Mecole Hardman was not ready to take on a bigger role in year 2. So everything kind of fit to where Tyreek Hill was obviously in the prime of his career. Mahomes trusted him the most along with Travis Kelce. So those targets make a lot of sense to me. And if the Chiefs offense wants to make an explosive play, he is understandably their easiest weapon to call upon from a skill position standpoint. I think this season, because we're going from 16 games to 17 games, I think the Chiefs are going to try to be a little bit deliberate, again, with spreading the ball around, trying to be less predictable, because that sort of caught up to them in December as obviously the season gets longer, the bodies start to wear on, defense start to catch up in terms of what you like to do in certain spots of the field. I think from a fantasy perspective, it's still reliable to pick Tyreek Hill relatively high in terms of the wide receiver rankings as they come off the board in your fantasy draft. I just think this year there's got to be more consistency over the long term, and I think he's still a very, very efficient player. One thing that fantasy fans should really be mindful of is even though he is less than 6 feet, he still is one of the best high point receivers in the league. He can jump and still take balls away from capable defenders. And I think if Mahomes feels like he has good time in the pocket, and again, a lot of this comes on off the Super Bowl, the man was scrambling for his life. If Orlando Brown, if Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, if Mike Rimmers or Lucas Niang, whoever plays right tackle, if Mahomes and the scheme give him the ability to read defenses a little bit more for that extra second, it should bear well for Tyreek Hill. I just don't know if we're going to see a season like in 2018 or even last year, just because the Chiefs quietly don't want to overextend Tyreek Hill because he's getting up there in age, and they need to see more from Mecole Hardman, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and those type of players in the offense. But I still think he's one of the most reliable receivers in the AFC. But maybe the targets will come down a little bit this year.
That makes total sense. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.